Leah Thomas's teammates, the female swimmers at University of Pennsylvania, I talked to at great lengths about this because this is something they really dealt with every single day. What they went through is criminal. They were forced every week to go to mandatory LGBTQ education meetings to learn about how just by being cisgender, they were oppressing Lia Thomas. When they were concerned about the locker room and they sent an email to their administration alongside their parents, their administration responded back with, and I swear I have a screenshot of it, their administration responded back with, if you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here's some counseling resources that you should seek.
Hi, everyone. Before we get into this very important interview with Riley Gaines, I would like to say that if you enjoy what I do here at blackteennews.com, please consider leaving a donation on the website on the donate page. And it costs to stream, it costs to run my website, even the emails aren't free. So if you would like to support in some kind of way with that overhead and to help us expand, whether it's $10, $20 or more, God bless you, I appreciate it. The Bible says you have not because you ask not. So I'm asking if you can support, I very much appreciate it. Or another quick way to give is you can go to paypal.me/blacktnews and give that way. You can also consider checking out different merchandise that we have on the site as well. Again, thank you to Riley Gaines for this interview, for being so brave and speaking out. And thank you to the Republicans in the 11th Congressional District for facilitating this interview. Very much appreciate it. God bless and enjoy. And make sure that you subscribe, that you hit the notification bells, and that you share.
Hello, everyone. This is Christina with Black Teen News, and I'm so honored today to have a wonderful fighter for women's rights. So many women are here fighting for women's rights today, but we have a true warrior today in Riley Gaines. And I have so many people who want you to know that they stand with you, that they appreciate what you do. I know you get a lot of vitriol and hate, so people from all over the world want you to know that you are doing an amazing job standing up for people.
Oh my goodness, well, I feel it. I feel the support. The support is tenfold anything negative. I think, of course, the negative tends to weigh more, but I know there are so many people behind me and so many people I'm speaking for, because I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm done competing. It's not about me. It's fighting for others who feel silenced, or fighting for that next generation who doesn't yet have a voice. So I appreciate the support behind me, and it makes doing what I'm doing and fighting for what I'm fighting for a lot easier.
So let's back up a little bit, because we get so people know what all you've accomplished in your career, and so you have a proper perspective to speak on these matters. So you've been swimming since you were 4, correct?
That's correct. And I graduated at 22, so I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport.
What sort of accomplishments have you achieved?
There's a lot of things in my career that I achieved that I will forever be proud of. I qualified for the Olympic trials twice. I qualified when I was 15. I was one of the youngest people there. And again, when I was 19, which translated into 20 because of COVID. I am a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion. I'm actually the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, which makes me one of the fastest Americans of all time. I'm the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year. So outside of just athletics even, I really tried to make myself, and I was really passionate about making myself a well-rounded individual. And I truly accredit those attributes, even the ones outside of athletics, to playing sports. Sports is what's given me the leadership and the confidence and the security to really do what I'm doing, and to want to and aspire to be someone who is well-rounded in regards to all aspects of life.
So you become this incredible athlete. You want to be a dentist, correct?
That's always been the plan. I graduated with my degree in human health sciences and health law, and I had every intention on being in dental school this year, but that's not what I'm doing. And I really realized the quickest way to make God laugh in your face is to make plans for yourself, because these are not the plans those weren't the plans God had for me. And I'm realizing that where I am now is where He needs me to be.
Okay, so your life, you're going through college, killing it in your field, and everything changes, and there's a spotlight in your sport on you because a male athlete decided to compete with you and other females. So watching it from a distance, I questioned out, like, why aren't other people speaking out? And I saw that photo, headlines with you next to him, while there's a headline that you didn't get your trophy. So can you please speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So this was at the NCAA Championships. It's the fastest meet in the world. It's where the most renowned, most well-known female swimmers compete all across the country. And so we're at this meet, a meet I'd trained my entire life for. And that first day of competition, we were forced to compete against biological male Lia Thomas, who was formerly Will Thomas. And a little background on Will Thomas. This was a mediocre male at best, ranking 462nd in the nation among the men, now trailing, dominating against the women. And so that first day of competition, we watched as Leah Thomas swam to a national title, again, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders, the most impressive female swimmers. That next day, the second day of competition, was the day that Thomas and I raced each other in the 200 freestyle. And ultimately, almost impossibly enough, it resulted in a tie. So we went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. And upon tying...
That's crazy, by the way.
It is crazy because we raced for...
Maybe it was divine intervention.
It absolutely is. When you're racing for over a minute and 40 seconds and you go the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, that's a rarity to say the least. And of course, that's God's doing. And so we go behind the awards podium. After we tied, and the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied and we have one trophy, so that trophy is gonna go to Leah. Riley, you have to go home empty-handed." And so when they told me this, standing next to Thomas, who is 6'4", towering over me at 5'5", I of course questioned, okay, I understand we tied, and I understand there's one trophy.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say kudos to you for even saying that, because there's so many people who probably would have just swallowed it and not said anything.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't think I could have, I wouldn't have swallowed it, but I know there's a lot of people who would have. So
well, everyone,
I appreciate you even doing that.
Well, everyone was swallowing it. We've been swallowing it all season. No one had said anything. We talked amongst ourselves, and we talked, of course, to our parents, and we talked to our coaches privately. But we'd been swallowing it all season, and it's because they wanted us to swallow it. They were forcing us to swallow it. They were gaslighting us and emotionally blackmailing us into swallowing it, essentially telling us that we were wrong for feeling uncomfortable in the locker room. That's what we dealt with all season. But I questioned him, why? And he responded back to me and said, well, Leah has to have the trophy for photos. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give it back. You go home empty-handed. Leah takes the trophy. And that's where that picture, this all happened moments after, the picture happened moments after this encounter happened. And it was at that moment when I realized I was done swallowing it. I was done waiting for someone else to speak up. And it really hit me that if we, as women, as female athletes, weren't willing to stick up for ourselves, we can't expect someone else to stick up for us. And so that's what thrusted me over the edge. But up until this point, of course, I knew everything that was happening was wrong in terms of the unfair competition in the locker room and what that looked like. But when they reduced everything we'd worked our entire life for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male, yeah, I was done.
I appreciate that. But so what were the conversations before up to that point? Because you said they were pressuring, gaslighting. So to me, like, watching from the outside, I'm just like, why is no one saying anything?
And it does. It feels as if I've been this lone voice and this lone face fighting for this. But I really do speak for the overwhelming majority of girls, especially, of course, of female athletes, but of women in general, people in general. But what that silencing piece looked like, Leah Thomas's teammates, the female swimmers at University of Pennsylvania I talked to, at great lengths about this, because this is something they really dealt with every single day. What they went through is criminal. They were forced every week to go to mandatory LGBTQ education meetings to learn about how just by being cisgender, they were oppressing Leah Thomas. When they were concerned about the locker room and they sent an email to their administration alongside their parents, their administration responded back with, and I swear I have a screenshot of it, their administration responded back with, if you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here's some counseling resources that you should seek. They were told that they can't take a stance because their school has already taken their stance for them. They were told you will never get a job, you will lose all of your friends, you'll never get into grad school, you'll lose your scholarship, you'll lose playing time if you speak out. They were told if they happened to speak out and any harm whatsoever were to come towards Lia Thomas's way, whether that be physical, emotional, mental harm, whatever it looked like, then they were solely responsible. And they would further say, you don't want to be responsible for someone else's harm, do you? And of course not. Who would want to be responsible for someone's harm? So that's why I say the gaslighting, the emotional blackmail.
That's abuse.
It absolutely is. They wanted these girls to feel wrong for feeling uncomfortable.
And indoctrination. You ever seen like a movie where people's like eyeballs are peeled back? That's what I'm thinking about, like different trainings that, they make you go through to force you to be okay with something that should have never happened.
Absolutely, and that's what happened across the country.
There was a lot of things you couldn't talk about that were very concerning, like a locker room situation. If you even brought up concerns about it, you were transphobic. If you even bring up the fact that Leah swimming might not be fair, you were immediately shut down as being called a hateful person or transphobic.
But there's never any conversation. The coaches don't sit everyone down and acknowledge what everyone's really upset about.
So Penn actually brought in people high up in the athletic department to talk to us. They brought in someone from like the LGBTQ center. They brought in someone from the psychological services.
So you're upset about what's happening, and so you need psychological help.
That's really incredible, and I guess more devastating than I could have imagined or thought.
And I think that's what a lot of the general public doesn't realize. They look at this situation and they kind of ridicule us for not wanting to be inclusive, but it's a lot bigger than that. In terms of, even take out the fairness in women's sports piece, there's so many other pieces to this that are simply not okay. It shows an active decline in our society that we're, by the fate of our own hands, doing to ourselves.
So there was a letter, I'm not sure if it was only Thomas's teammates, that said, we're okay with you being a woman. We don't want to, say that you're not, but we think it's unfair for you to compete. And he was asked about that in an interview.
You can't go halfway and be like, I support trans women and trans people, but only to a certain point, where if you support trans women as women and they've met all the NCAA requirements, and then I don't know if you can really say something like that. I
kind of thought Thomas had a point. if you really are trying to buy into the identity, then why can't he?
Right. And I think that goes back to girls feeling as if they have to kind of handle this approach and being kind of apologetic in a sense. They have to say, we're okay with, and I think there's some validity, like, do what you want kind of in your own time. I don't necessarily support it, but do what you want. I don't want to control what someone does. But my thing is, don't ask me to lie about it. Yeah. And that's what's happening. They're asking us to deny objective truth. They're asking us to say Leah Thomas is a woman.
And apparently they wanted to change your minds if they're women.
Right.
Right.
But based off of what, of course, I know Lia Thomas is not a woman, but based off of what we saw in the locker room, we know this is not a woman. There are so many different facets to this that kind of contribute to this apologetic approach that women tend to take, especially girls in the position, girls who are directly impacted, girls who are still in the position where they're competing. Women typically tend to be more agreeable. They typically, they want to be compassionate. They have this empathy. They don't want to ruffle feathers or step on toes, but that's how we've gotten here. That's how we've allowed this lunacy to really take the severity that it has by not being willing to stand firm in the truth. And that's why I've taken the stance that I have.
Now, when you had an event where things went awry, And when I saw how you were treated by the protesters, it made me more sympathetic to all the other women who felt like they couldn't speak out. Not that I wasn't sympathetic but I'm like, you gotta do something. But to see how you were treated, and that's probably all their fears manifested.
It absolutely is. Of course, no one wants to be labeled any kind of name. You get called transphobic, homophobic. I get called racist. I'm like, what does this have to do with race?
Someone called me racist last night on a live. It was a white guy. I'm like, I don't even know why. I'm okay.
But they'll throw any label, any derogatory, awful label your way to try and silence you. And of course, these girls don't want to put themselves in that position. But you're right, they see what happens to someone like myself when I go to this university and talk about something as simple as saying men and women are different. Because let me reiterate, that's what I was there to talk about, to share my lived experience in competing against Thomas and what that looked like for us. Nothing opinionated, nothing hateful, nothing other than exactly what happened. Yet I was met with a total mob. I was ambushed. These protesters, they stormed into the room I was speaking. They turned off the lights. They rushed to the front. They physically assaulted myself. An officer had to step in, kind of evacuate from that room, to which when we got in the hallway, there was only more protesters, hundreds, filtering in from the stairs. So we couldn't leave the building. So we had to go into another room along that hallway, where ultimately I was held hostage for ransom.
Yeah, for ransom.
For ransom for over 3 hours. And these people, and literally they were, the videos kind of online don't show exactly what happened and for how long, but these people were demanding money from me.
To keep things peaceful and
make her lose her flight
and move forward. Okay? Tell her to pay us. Tell her to pay us, and then she could go. $10 each. Because she probably got paid for this shit, so we could get paid for it too.
They said, if you want to make it home safely, you have to pay us. That's the only way we'll let you out. And so I'm sitting in this room thinking how easy it would for me to just be silent, to stop this, to continue on with my dreams of dental school, and I'm married, and kind of ride off into that sunset. But as I'm listening to these people yell the most violent, awful, vengeful, hateful things to both myself and the officers who had stepped in to protect me, I realized I can't be silent, or else they win, and we can't let them win. But you're exactly right. People see that, parents see that, coaches see that, and that's why they don't speak out. They don't want to put themselves in that position. Of course not.
So there's a lot of parents who want to know, what do they say to their kids, especially their daughters who have aspirations in athletics, and this is policy that's affecting their kids right now or is about to, and they're not sure quite what to do.
I get messages from parents all the time who tell me, my daughter is so discouraged. She's competing against males or a boy, and she doesn't want to play sports at all, so she's quitting her sport. And so my message to parents is, and my message to female athletes is, to not get discouraged. We can't cave. We can't give up our opportunities and really let these people let this side win. That being said, my message to parents is to defend your daughters. It is so important. Go to those school board meetings. Talk to the people who you need to talk to ensure this doesn't happen. Know where kind of your state falls on this issue. There have been 21 states thus far that have passed some sort of fairness in women's sports bill protecting typically K through 12. I think there's 15 or 16 states that are protecting the collegiate level. Know where your state falls. Contact your representatives and your senators. I think that's crucial. And I think even parents with sons, I think it's so important to teach sons masculinity. I feel as if we've kind of veered away from that, and it's deemed as something that's toxic. But men are...
I think the absence of masculinity is proving to be...
It's absolutely it is, where there's this saying, and it's hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and it's this cycle. And I think we're in this piece where weak men are creating hard times. And so we can only hope, of course, that would garner strong men, but we need to incorporate men who are going to protect and provide. I think that's really important.
I wrote an article about women's spaces, and I said, being less chivalrous may make you less of a man, but it won't make you more of a woman.
I love that. It's so true. I love that.
I just don't understand why so many people feel that, even if you want to be fair to people who have dysphoria, I don't understand why it's women who have to lose on this issue.
Absolutely.
And I think the example with the trophy just showed how much they were putting, that group above women to a degree to where it just didn't make sense.
No, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I agree with you in saying, it's not to say that all people who are trans aren't struggling with this gender dysphoria. Of course, I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what that entails. But can we not acknowledge how the systems that we have in place are allowing women to be taken advantage of, are allowing us to be collateral damage, not just in sports, but even in prisons? You're seeing these men who are convicted of awful things such as rape, realize all you have to do to be a woman is say, I am a woman. And they're getting into women's prisons and they're doing awful things to women, impregnating women. It's happened in New Jersey, Ohio, Kansas. Just in California in recent weeks, there was over 1,400 men applied to be women. And again, it's just acknowledging how the system we have in place is to be taken advantage of, and it is being taken advantage of.
The general population of male sexual crimes is 11%, but for men who identify as women, it's 50% or 48, something like that, close
Absolutely.
To it. A little weird,
Yeah.
a little suspicious, but there's plenty of people who have gender dysphoria, who are men who are living their lives to the best of their ability, who don't like what's going on. I had some videos that have gone viral on this topic, and they're like, "We're with you," and leave kids alone, protect women's spaces. So, the fact that we have so many officials in places pushing it, why do you think it is? Because it's not just from the activists or people living it themselves, but there's a bigger force behind it.
Absolutely. I have, my wheels haven't stopped turning about this for the past year. I'm really taking a sit back and kind of trying to understand the bigger picture. First and foremost, I'm of course a Christian, and I see this as spiritual warfare. No doubt. I mean, this is no longer right versus wrong or good versus bad. This whole movement is really moral versus evil. It's light versus dark. And I think that's evident. I think, of course, the Bible, it tells us, it prophesizes this will happen, and it tells us we're on the winning side of this. But just how long do we have to endure this? I think, of course, another kind of reasoning behind why or what's pushing this. This is kind of a conspiracy that I've been thinking about, but I think the rate of transitioning from men transitioning to female is 5-to-1 in comparison to female transitioning to male or transitioning to man. And typically within that man transitioning to female, it's typically white men who are transitioning. And so I think, obviously, we know the white man has never been this group that is marginalized or victimized or oppressed in any matter. And so I think it's a way for them to take that victim mentality, which is kind of bizarre to want to be a victim. But I think it comes with less responsibility. It comes with less accountability. And that's what they're striving for, is the sense of entitlement, as if they're owed something. And so it's a very weird kind of method behind this, because I don't know why anyone would want to be an oppressed or marginalized group, but I think people are actually striving for that, striving to get attention in whatever capacity that looks like.
I think there's truth to that. I think one of the most sad videos I ever saw on TikTok, there was a group of girls outside somewhere, and one of them was on a stage, and it seemed like they were just talking to each other, and one of them said, "I'm a boy," and then they all just start jumping and cheering for each other. I'm like, why is it so exciting to not be a woman?
Yeah.
I think we have a big societal problem here, that there's so many people disdain their own gender like that.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing, I shouldn't say it's the same thing, but it almost garners this big, lots of attention, this big support and celebration almost if someone comes out as gay or whatever that looks like. And it's you wouldn't get that same kind of response if you said, hey, I'm straight. It's just interesting how people are so willing to embrace this and not kind of the other side of the same issue. It is very interesting.
I think, I think part of it is also a bit of like cultural Marxism and stuff, but you can see you can sort people out to see who they are and where they stand. Like, you know, who's going to be like, this is objective truth, like I'm going to stand by, etc. And you have people who are going to maybe say something like Macy Gray and then can, you know, switch all of a sudden to say, well, womanhood is a vibe.
Absolutely.
And walk it back. There's people who know what's the truth is and won't say anything. There's people who's just always afraid, or people who just totally buy in. So
Absolutely.
You're kind of setting up society into the sheep and the...
Totally. And I think the Marxism piece is really important because, again, it's bigger, of course, than just sports in regards to the silencing, the denying objective truth, the changing of the language that we use. It's no longer mother, that's deemed offensive. It's birth giver, or cervix haver, or uterus owner, or chest feeder. I mean, the list goes on of terms they've changed that strictly apply to women. And you're right, that is deeply rooted in Marxism.
Well, I think there's got to be some kind of bigger political aim anyway, because it is a small percentage of the population. I guess the more social contagion, the bigger it will be. But politicians, especially like on the Democrat side, who are like so gung-ho on pushing it, I'm like, this isn't a large electorate, so what's the goal there? And I'm like, well, more things that get passed in this way, more kind of like butts heads against like what evangelical,
Totally.
Right-wing Americans you don't like.
Right. And that's true. They want to break down faith. They want to break down family and freedoms. And again, it points to Marxism, and you can open any history book and see how that turns out for any civilization. And it's not good. It's as if we're living in this George Orwell dystopian novel where they're trying to make us say 2 + 2 is 5. And we know that it's not 5, yet some people, like especially the representatives at both the state and federal level on the Democrat side, are saying. So yeah, I 100% agree.
So back to Thomas's statement when he said, if I'm really a woman, why can't I play? And that sort of mentality. I kind of think that there's people who want to work out a lot of nuance, and I kind of think you can't have too much nuance because I do think there's validity in that statement. So for like people on the right who are kind of debating with each other and navigating how far that it goes, or what we do with pronouns, or even like spaces, do you have any advice or opinions on that?
I think before anything, we can't let go of the truth. I mean, there are 2 sexes, and you cannot change your sex. If someone wants to identify as a cat, I mean, you can't stop them from doing as such, but don't ask me or expect me to go along with it, because that's lying. And so I think my number one piece of advice across all aspects of life is stand firm in the truth, stand firm in the science. I mean, this is the same party that once told us to follow the science. They're not doing that now. So stand firm in the truth, the science, the common sense, logic, reasoning, and don't falter from that, because that's when things go sideways. So standing firm to what we know is true, and be unwavering in that.
So as far as like spaces go, you like locker rooms and bathrooms, do you think they should all just remain sex segregated?
Based off of my experience sharing a locker room with Thomas, first of all, we weren't forewarned we would be sharing a locker room with Leah. The only time we became aware of this...
I also question the purpose of that too.
Yeah.
I don't understand, other than like submission. I don't know.
No, it didn't make sense to us either. And I say us, I mean every single female in that space. Again, no one asked for our consent. We did not give our consent. This man walked into our locker room, disrobed, and was fully intact with an exposing male genitalia simultaneously while we were undressing. And no one asked for our consent. That seemed as if a year ago, 2 years ago, this person would have been arrested immediately and charged with sexual harassment, voyeurism, indecent exposure. I mean, I'm sure the list can go on of charges that could be made. But now not only was it happening, it was being encouraged. It was being celebrated. Thomas was nominated for NCAA Woman of the Year after all of this fiasco. And so, based off of my experience and how I saw it affected women, this infringement, this injustice, how it affected us. One girl, Lia Thomas's teammate, prior to coming to college, she was sexually assaulted by someone she didn't know. Being in that locker room with Thomas, she describes it, of course, as trauma. I mean, it's awful to put her in that situation. She expressed to her coach how she felt discomfort and how it was very triggering and it caused her anxiety. And her coach said, "I'm sorry, you have to be inclusive." So totally disregarding her feelings and her safety and her privacy.
Everyone keeps using that word. I don't think they know what it means.
No, they don't, because Title IX was, of course, passed to prevent sex discrimination prevent discrimination on the basis of sex. But by allowing Thomas to compete with the women and change in our locker room in the guise of inclusion, that's exclusive to the very female athletes who this federal civil rights law was passed to protect. So back to the locker room, I wholeheartedly believe they should be sex segregated. Even if someone has gone through surgery or whatever kind of reassignment that looks like, it's still not right to ask women to smile and kindly accept a male in our changing spaces.
There was a case not too long ago where there was a young woman who was changing in YMCA, and there was a male in there, and then the media, like the local media, was just like, she's transitioned, fully transitioned. Like, she was crazy.
Austin, I feel like a big part of the story that's either been a misconception or people are just forgetting about is that Wood has fully transitioned into a woman and was in the women's bathroom.
Yeah, that's right, Wale. In fact, she says she is a woman, and she really wants to drive home the fact that she transitioned over 5 years ago, and that, you know, she is a woman, and she says she's a woman, period.
And I just couldn't believe that people are like gung-ho and treating women like this.
As I was showering after my workout, I saw a naked male in the women's locker room. I immediately went back into the shower, terrified, and hid behind their flimsy excuse for a curtain until he was gone. I was made to feel as though I had done something wrong when I talked to people at the YMCA. Somehow, the indecent exposure of a male to a female minor was an inconvenience to them.
And that's happening at a rampant rate. I could list example after example after example.
Redux, like...
Dug into the history of that individual. Some pervy stuff online.
Absolutely, and that's the same with Thomas. If you dig, actually you don't even have to dig because they post this stuff publicly. There's a lot of stuff that point to fetish and perversion, including Thomas is an AGP, which stands for autogynephiliac, which means he's just sexually aroused as dressing as a woman. Yet we were forced to participate in this and undress in front of this man. Yeah, and I think that's a common occurrence in regards to this issue.
I'm sorry that you guys had to go through that. I genuinely am. I'm glad that people can hear about it at least so they know what we're kind of up against. But this isn't it's funny how everyone wants to protect women and fight for their rights. But when they say that, they just mean like abortion and stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't sincerely mean that.
I think my final message is to be emboldened, be empowered, never apologize for expressing how you feel. I myself am guilty of that, especially as this all kind of unwrapped. I felt like I needed to, say, I'm sorry. It's very similar to what Thomas's teammate said, and embracing kind of this person transitioning, but not when it affects me. But in reality, you shouldn't have to take that approach. So I'm just grateful to be on here. I really am, and to continue shedding light on this. And I'm grateful for all the work you do. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, different merch, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com, and I will see you guys next time.